Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Fitzmaurice from the Central Office, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Is your client considering buying a space for their business or, as you see on the screen before you, purchasing a commercial building to suit small business needs? Your microphones and telephones are currently muted to eliminate background noise during the program. We will take questions throughout the presentation. To ask a question, type it into the question box on your control panel, or if you have a working microphone, raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon and I'll unmute you. Today's program is being recorded and will be available through MQS in the Shared Resources section. So let's get started. I'm very pleased to introduce Kathy Teresi, Certified Business Advisor from our Mid-Hudson SBDC, and Kathy's also a licensed real estate broker. Welcome, Kathy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kathy, for the lovely introduction. We're going to get started in talking about commercial real estate. It's a different type of psychology that we talk about when we're talking about finding a space for business. There is no one size that's going to fit anybody in a commercial space. The decision, of course, must be weighted by the business owner. But one thing I do suggest is that you work with your clients and do your due diligence. You really have to think about the business that's involved. And sometimes in real estate, what happens, it becomes purely an emotional issue. So the emotion would be, I like the space, I like the color of the building, it's in a great neighborhood, but those things are not really the type of answers that you want to find. You want to really pick a location that could be rather permanent for your business, because you don't want to have to think about moving, especially with a large purchase like a commercial space. The important things is that when you're thinking about your space, you have to be justified to know that you have a long-term commitment there, and that's really the key words. I mean, when you're thinking about an investment, it's going to be a 20, 25-year investment. There's not a lot of flippable commercial properties because they are pretty much at a premium, although now the market has really been soft with commercial properties becoming available, so there are a lot of places that are moving out of New York State, so there's certainly a lot of opportunity there. Your business can actually afford, if your business can afford the building, what's usually happening is you talk to your, of course, accountant or attorney, and you decide how you're going to set up the corporation or the business, because the building becomes a separate entity in itself, and usually the business will rent space from that entity. This will allow for you to use that as an investment opportunity, and that's really truly what it should be all about, because it's not only for the business, but it's an investment as well into your personal wealth. So there are things that you should think about besides just the space for this particular building. So of course there's advantages and disadvantages on any situation or any decision that you make in business, but what you want to talk about are the main advantages of purchasing a commercial space. And basically, in the long run, you will be paying out less money, but in the initial purchase of the building, you will be paying out more. So you really need to have a long-term vision for your business and how it will grow. The space needs to be able to accommodate that, so both in size and potential, which means you have to think about a long-term business plan and where you're going to grow the business and how you're actually going to be able to stay at that particular location and perhaps move into another area of the building. So usually when you buy a building, it's going to be multifunctional, where you perhaps can also include rental space for other tenants, which always helps in covering the cost of maintaining the building. So if you're not, the other important things is that of course you're going to be long-term. You're not thinking of selling your business in the near future. You're not thinking of retiring in the near future, and a mortgage rate, especially at today's rate, you can lock it in and it could actually hedge against inflation. So it's right now, of course, the interest rate being so promising that it's not been raised in quite some time, that is something that you can fix and grow into for at least 20 to 25 years. So it's certainly a good investment at this point. The only thing is that owning real estate allows you to profit any combination. So you have to think about the cash flow, the appreciation, and how you're going to be reducing your debt as you're making your monthly mortgage payments. You can get very reasonable rates now for long term, and you may even qualify for the SBA guaranteed loans. So another advantage is, of course, the tax deductions. Building owners may deduct, of course, your mortgage interest, your real estate taxes, your property insurance, water and sewer, utilities, repairs, and just general overall maintenance. So that becomes a part of your expenses that you can deduct off the earnings or gross income of your building. And of course, if you add rental income to that, this will offset those costs. And when you decide to sell or move your business, you can still keep the rental income. So it's basically an investment into your future, not only for the business, but for yourself. The best tax deduction, of course, are your paper losses, and depreciation is a good one. This one may be up to 39 years, and of course it reduces your tax liability. So when you're thinking about making such an investment, you have to think about, again, the long-term effects. So when you're looking at a building, let's talk about the things that you should be looking at besides, the basic expenses that go along with it. But you want to actually look to make sure that the space that you're looking at is zoned for your type of business. Not all areas will allow specific businesses to be conducted. For example, if you're looking for an industrial space, you have to make sure that that is zoned for that particular usage. So not all buildings can be made to be a fit for certain types of business. You want to make sure the space is large enough for your business. Does it offer enough room for the retail or office or storage or workroom space if you need it? Does it have your layout requirements? Does the building need any repairs currently? So when you're looking at that particular opportunity, you want to make sure that you're going to have your least outlay of cash initially, because remember, there's a lot of things that will come up into the equation when you're actually working on putting the business, retrofitting it for your particular need. You want to make sure also that it has an existing utilities, lighting, heating, and coolings that will meet your needs. Of course, all the rewiring and plumbing can be done, but if it's something that's workable in the beginning, of course, it saves your initial cost. If you choose a location that's relatively remote from your customer base, you have to make sure that the customers know where you're going. Is this space consistent with an image that you want to maintain, or is it something that needs a lot of renovation? And another thought process that you should, because this is all developing your critical thinking skills, is you want to think about the demographics of the area. Is the space located in a safe neighborhood with low crime rate? It's not just you and your employees coming to the building, but it's your customers as well. And if it's a retail space where you have a lot of customers coming into your location, you want to make sure that they feel safe and it's something that they would feel comfortable coming to at 7 o'clock at night. At this time in New York State, it's dark, so you want to make sure that there's plenty of lighting and it's in a safe neighborhood. And the exterior lighting in the area is adequate enough to attract those night shoppers. That's going to make a difference. So you want to make sure it's a safe neighborhood. The other thing is looking at the area and making sure that the neighboring businesses will perhaps attract customers to your business as well. So the competitors, who are they that's located close to your space? And can you compete with them successfully? And is there space easily and accessible to your customers? So is there parking space? Is it adequate? Is the area served by public transportation, which is a big deal when you're going into a city area or perhaps where you have lots of senior customers? And can suppliers make deliveries? So sometimes, especially if you're in a main street area, there's no perhaps delivery area for the deliveries to be made. You have no back entrance and everything is just a main street area. So that's something that you should consider. And if your business expands in the future, will you be able to accommodate that growth? They're all considerations that you should make when you're thinking about a space. Adding benefits, of course, would be if you're thinking about a building, it would be a good idea to provide space for other businesses to lease. That would add potential income to you. In the business, the space is needed for, of course, future growth. If indeed you need that, you can end the lease for your tenants and then take over that space. So sometimes when you're thinking about a space, you have to think about the whole picture. It's really important to build a full and complete business plan with at least 5 to 10 to 20 years of what you want to do in the business. Of course, this would be a great place to have a crystal ball, but we don't have that. But if we did, it would be a great place to apply it. More dollars to support and maintain the property. That's what you want to think about when you're thinking about a building. So, of course, having that space to rent works. The other advantage, of course, is no rent at some point in the life of the building. There are fixed costs that you're going to have. In purchasing a building, you may qualify as the buyer or business owner for a fixed rate mortgage up to 90% with the Small Business Administration guarantee. So we all know and we've heard of that. That gives you the best interest rate and the largest guarantee, of course. And if the rate goes down, you can always opt to refinance to reduce that cost. But remember that 90% means that you still have to come up with 10% as a down payment. So if you're looking at, just for round number purposes, if you're looking at a building that costs $1 million, if you look at the round numbers of that, you would need 10%, a minimum of 10% down, which is $100,000. So unless your business has been successful to some point or you have a big chunk of cash sitting in the bank, that may be a tough nut to crack in the beginning. But remembering this, if you can get a fixed rate mortgage and if the rate goes down, you can always refinance to reduce your cost. In 20 years, when the mortgage is paid off, that total mortgage payment that happens every month can be eliminated. So of course, that's why you want to think of the very long-term plan. The other advantage would be the decision-making power. So this enhances a building to develop customer relations to a permanent location. So you want to think about the building as being your business's address, and it's not going to be something that's going to change. It also gives you the ability to control the design to reflect the business and your ability to improve and expand as it's needed. So it gives you total control and decision-making of the location. Sometimes when you're dealing with renting space, the landlord has many restrictions on you. But if you own the space, that certainly gives you the opportunity to actually get out there and do what you feel you'd like to do to reflect your business. For the long-term investment, that again is a big benefit. Over the long term, the building is gaining, hopefully gaining, in its valuation. So it's a more valuable asset for you. And that's certainly something in this market that has been a little daunting because not all real estate appreciates the way we would hope. But it actually gives you the potential for the long term to perhaps buy a building now that may need some rehab, fix that building up, and then in the long term its valuation or it should appreciate a lot. So owning real estate will give you that investment opportunity. So it's not just an investment in your business, as I said before, it's actually an investment in your personal wealth. When you have an appreciating asset, and that's what real estate should be. For a fraction of the down payment leveraging, it actually helps you with your investments. It will also give you the cash flow that you need to perhaps leverage other investments in the future. Because when you go to expand your business, or when you're going for a business loan, and I'm sure most of the advisors understand this, you need to personally guarantee your loan. And when you're personally guaranteeing it, you're usually taking your own home. But if you have a business and the building is part of your business, it actually gives you the opportunity to use that as being a guarantee against any business loan. So it actually helps you hedge the need for actually leveraging your investments. If you decide later on that it's something that doesn't work, or the building is too small for you, there is something that you can do to exchange the asset. It's called a 1031 exchange, and what you can do is you can sell the building, reinvest the property without paying capital gains through something that's called the 1031 exchange, and that will allow for you to take one asset and trade up to perhaps a larger or a bigger asset, maybe giving you more space. There are other considerations too. So not everything is an advantage. Of course, there's risks that we make, that we take with every decision that we make in business. So we have to develop a thought process where if it doesn't work, or if there's other issues that we can be concerned with, we should certainly develop that thought process before we get started. So there are some challenges that we take on. And of course, the first challenge is just finding that space that the business and the future plans and the location is where you want to be. So that's the biggest challenge, is that matching principle. As a real estate broker, it's always difficult, but the biggest challenge that we have is actually matching a property to a client customer. So when you're actually going out and helping them, it's good to know, and it's good for you to sign on with a real estate professional that actually specializes in commercial property, because they can give you the biggest advantage, because they can tell you what's on the market or what's coming on the market, and they know a little bit about history as well. So they can tell you a little bit of the ins and outs of what's going on with a neighborhood or a building. So there may be an opportunity for you to find the building, but that again is one of the biggest challenges, because you do need to develop that critical thinking skill to be able to say, okay, you need to be a visionary, and you need to have that full business plan developed or designed so you can actually see yourself in this building succeeding as well as growing with future potential. So it can take a long time to find the right building, and that can create lengthy delays in moving and growing your company. But there are certain thought processes that you have to develop. So you want to look for the location and size, and you have to make sure that the long-term business needs and the future growth of the business are, of course, a big consideration, because that, as I said, is something that can take a very long time. Another disadvantage is the upfront cost of purchasing a building. So there are certain things that you should do as an investor. You want to think about an appraisal of the property. If a bank is involved, the bank will actually require you to have an appraisal done, and business appraisals can be very expensive. You want to have an inspection done of the building to make sure that it is feasible. Number one, because some of the older systems like asbestos and things that may be found in the building could cause you a lot of money to have removed. So we have abatements of asbestos that really can, depending upon the size of the building, can cost the owner a lot of money. So you want to inspect it for the heating and ventilation system to make sure there's no contaminants there or there's no problem. You want to especially look for mold issues. You want to look to see if you have any hazardous areas, if it's a brownfield, or if there's something that went on with the ground around the building. So you want to make sure that that's thorough, and you do your due diligence to make sure that there's no problems that are going to arise and cost you more money in the end. So that's really the name of the game. The biggest thing is going to be the down payment for the mortgage. Minimally, it will be 10%, and that's with an SBA guarantee. So if you find a building for $1 million and it meets your needs, you'll need at least $100,000 in cash to put down as a down payment. With in addition to that, you'll need closing costs, which usually come to 10 to 12% of the purchase price. So you have to keep all of those things in mind. Again, finding the right space is not something that's easy, but when you do your due diligence and you realize that, okay, I have the upfront cost for the purchase and I have the property appraisal and I did the inspections and everything looks positive, then of course, and not until then, should you move forward with your thought that you want to be an owner of your building. The buying is going to cost you a lot more up front than leasing, of course, and you have to figure out, can you afford to tie up that money in a down payment for a mortgage? That's a big question, because unless you have a big pot of money, or unless your business has been very successful and you have the available funds, that may be a tough nut to crack. Even if you can afford it, though, you should think about, would the money be better spent if you invested in your growing business rather than the building? The other important thing is that, would you outgrow that space? What if you need to move in a few years? Moving a business is a very expensive process, not only with regard to your client base, but also your employees and the equipment that you have in the building. Do you want to deal with the added hassle of maintaining a property? That can cost you a lot of money. And especially if it's an aging building that has not been well maintained, there may be a lot of things that creep up. And buying a building, of course, costs significantly more initially than leasing space. So as a result, you have sufficient excess cash on hand for your company that you can use. That's not going to be required for operations of the building or the investment. So certainly taking on a building is more responsibility. As an owner of the building, there's financial management, you have repairs, you have unexpected need for closures that you didn't think about. You have disasters we've all heard about Sandy and the ramifications that had on business. Could have water and sewer issues, the heat could go out, and there's all types of things that can creep up that actually fall on your shoulders. So when you own the building, you're responsible for all the aspects: financial, repairs, maintenance, and this can take a great deal of extra time from you, and it actually can reduce your focus on the business. As unexpected things creep up, we know that property taxes have a tendency to go up a lot more than they go down, so certainly that's an issue. Insurance can rise depending upon the hazards to the area. And then, of course, you have unexpected things that creep up. That's, like I said before, if you don't have a well-maintained building, sometimes what will happen is that things will come up at the most inconvenient time. But that's just ownership of a building, and it's not always easy. So we should look at this not only from a cash flow aspect, but we should look at it in an investment ratio. So let's talk about how we look at an investment of a building rather than the cash flow projections, because cash flow projections, I'm sure you've seen a million of them, and of course when you're doing your analytical review on if it is feasible for you to buy the building or not, you should do a cash flow analysis, and the cash flow analysis should include a scenario for leasing and then a scenario for purchase. Of course, some of these will come out to be equal, but the basis is going to be, think about the long-term investment and if it makes sense for you. So in looking at an investment ratio, I just drew up something that was quite simplistic. Actually, what it does is it just identifies, and this was basically just using a $1 million property, if you can find that matches your needs, just using simple numbers. We looked at years 1, 2, and 3, And by looking at years 1, 2, and 3, we can see over the long term how your investment's going to grow. So this is just saying that for the price of the commercial property, which was $1 million, we had net income without the debt finance that happens to be the rental less expenses, which was $55,000 for the first year. That gives us a return on our investment, which is only identifying the income without debt finance, taking into account what you've paid for the building, and this is just what you paid long term. So actually your return on your investment would be 5% or 5.5. You can't get that in a bank today. So find a bank that will pay you that much. The income is the total rent. So again, always think of a property that you can have investment income from. These are the expenses. That's taxes and insurance, and it includes taxes and insurance as well as all the operation expenses on the building. So it gave me a net rental income of $55,000. If we take the price of the building less our down payment, finance the $900,000 over 20 years at 6%, which is kind of high in this market, but we were just using basic numbers. We took our total income, which was $400,000 on this space, and we have debt finance for a year, so that's how much your interest costs for the year, and that gave us, with the leveraging, a net income of $1,600. So if you look at the return on your investment for the first year, it's better than a bank at 1.65%. Your added capital, that would be the principal repayment on this loan, is $24,000. So if your gross receipts were $400, your payouts, which is the mortgage including principal and interest, is $422. The first year of operation, we lost $22,000. But for tax purposes, if you were going for a loan, you can also take away your depreciation expense. That's why when you're filing your taxes, tax accountants actually love business that invest in buildings, because you have a big write-off for depreciation. And this is just straight line over the life of the property. So that would actually give you a positive cash flow, because what's going to happen is you're going to be able to pay less in taxes because you have a bigger write-off. Here you have a paper write-off of $25,000 along with the $22,000 you lost. So for the first year, and of course you're realizing that you need to identify with the income that you have coming in and how you're going to be able to maintain that. So it's certainly not for somebody who's weak of heart, because if you take on year 2 and year 3, you're going to see by the 3rd year you'll be positive. So you just have to figure out how you're going to get over those bumps in the road. And that's what we do, is we actually just look at the picture over a period of time. So it's not just for the first year. The first year you're probably going to lose money, but as you continue with your rents, usually you have a 3% increase a year. So with your rents increasing and your expenses perhaps maintaining or going up a little bit, that's going to be helpful for you to maintain that building. So after a 3-year period, you can project how much you're going to be able to gain or income you'll have from the building. So it's usually not within the first couple of years. It usually takes 3 to 5 years to turn a building around. So it's positive. But basically you should look at the activity ratios rather than just looking at a cash flow analysis, because this is from an investment standpoint, because remember, this is growing your personal wealth, so you want to make sure that you look at the investment picture. So that's the way we develop a thought process when I'm talking to investors. But the bottom line is, when you're deciding to purchase, is it economically feasible? You know, does it make sense? And that's the question that the building owner, business owner, must answer. So the most important question to consider is, of course, can the business afford the purchase of a building? As you can see, there are significant advantages and disadvantages of ownership. But looking at your cash flow analysis as far as your analyticals, as well as the demographics and the location and your long-term potential, making that determination can be simple or as complex as you make it. And of course, there are location analytical tools. You want to look at traffic pattern information. You want to look at demographics and do that competitive analysis. You may find two buildings that you may think, oh, I really like this space and this space. And then that's where you want to go and use your analytical tools that make the process a little bit easier in considering one over the other. And additionally, of course, you should do the cash flow analysis as part of the process. Most of the time, when you, like anything else that you purchase, we usually start off purely with an emotional feeling that we have an attachment to that specific space, but make sure you think it out clearly. Basically, you want to just think outside the box. Okay, I think I did enough talking. Anyone have any questions that perhaps I can address?
Thanks, Kathy. We had Kate Moody would like to have that activity ratio worksheet. So if you are open, you could email that to me and I can pass it on and put it in MQS.
Sure, not a problem.
All right, great. Does anybody have any questions or comments? See, you're just so thorough, Kathy, that nobody has anything to say.
Silence is golden, you know, as they say, Kathy. Okay, so I'll be happy to send you that ratio worksheet. It's an Excel worksheet that basically has built-in formulas, so you would just plug in the numbers.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And Kathy, thank you again for presenting. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.